Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a Criminally Basic podcast. My name's Megan.
And I'm Hannah.
And before we start today, I just want to get it out there. Everything I say in this podcast, in this episode, is alleged unless it has already been proven in a court of law, via video, or stated by a lawyer, police, etc. So any theories, any opinions that I make are entirely my own and not to be taken in any serious context. I am 23 years old. I am not a lawyer.
I'm also 23 and I'm not a lawyer either.
So just take everything we're saying as alleged. With that being said, I was scrolling through YouTube the other day, as I do, and I came across a video whose title at first had me kind of just rolling my eyes. The video was from the channel Inside Edition, and it was titled, "Did Teen Kill Neighbor to Become Famous on TikTok?"
What?
Mm-hmm. So this title kind of had me thinking, okay, is this real? I thought it was just kind of a clickbait title. You know, maybe this teenager had a TikTok and killed his neighbor, and since he had one, the media was blaming that as the motive, or suggesting that it was the motive in order to get clicks, but it actually had nothing to do with it. But I watched the video, and another, and then I went down a whole rabbit hole of news articles, and now I'm wondering, did this kid really kill his neighbor to become famous on TikTok? The answer, I think, is a little bit more complicated than that, so let's try to answer that question. Today, we will be diving into the murder of William Durham by his neighbor, Zachary Latham. 52-year-old William Durham had lived on the formerly quiet street of Thornhill Road in New Jersey with his wife Tiffany and his two sons, who were 17 and 21 at the time of the incident. Now, I say formerly quiet street because 2 years before May of 2020, they got a new neighbor, Zachary Latham, who was 16 at the time. Zach was a bit of a troublemaker. According to an NJ.com article written by Matt Gray, Zach had a juvenile record that included charges of violence. While I couldn't find exactly what those charges were or what the incidents were that caused them, since he was a juvenile when they happened, an article from the Daily Mail stated that he had, quote, a history of simple assault, terroristic threats, and criminal mischief, end quote.
That sounds pretty scary.
Right. And just a side note here, the Daily Mail is not exactly known to be the most reputable news source, so do take their claims with a grain of salt. Problems started almost as soon as Zach moved in. He had his license and apparently liked to go fast. So, Hannah, I'm going to ask you now. What would you consider to be too fast on a suburban residential street? And let's say the speed limit is like 35 miles per hour. How fast would be too fast before you became concerned?
On a suburban street, probably like 80, 90.
Okay, well, I couldn't find the exact speed limit of the road where Zach and the Durhams lived, but I did find on NJ.gov, the state of New Jersey's website, that 35 miles per hour is, for the most part, the top speed limit in a residential area, and it just goes down from there.
Yeah.
And this is residential, suburban, just kind of your typical neighborhood.
Yeah, no. That's why I said 80, 90, because that's real fast in a suburban.
Yeah, so that's like the speed limit that someone would have to be going in order for you to be concerned, like, and reach out to law enforcement, for instance.
On a suburban area, yes.
All right, so let's assume that 35 is the speed limit on their street. There is video evidence on Zach's TikTok account that he was driving over 100 miles per hour on a suburban street with kids and neighbors.
I feel like even on a suburban street, 60 is a little too fast.
I know, so I live in a very residential suburban area, and oh, this is going to sound horrible. I don't know exactly what the speed limit is on the road that I live on, but I think it's about 30, because I typically go about 30. That's kind of a safe speed to go where I live. I mean, there are kids around where I live. There are people who are always walking their dogs. There's a lot of pets around where I live. So if someone was consistently going over 100 miles per hour down my street, I honestly would be concerned enough to reach out to my local law enforcement and say, hey, this person is being dangerous and it's just a matter of time before something really bad happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with kids and pets and old people and all that jazz.
Exactly. So this is kind of where TikTok comes into play. Zach, like a lot of other people his age, had a TikTok. I personally don't have a TikTok. Hannah does.
I love my TikTok.
Hannah sends me stuff all the time.
I do.
Yeah. So there he would post a lot of, in my personal opinion, kind of douchey things. At some point, he got a Corvette and would post a lot about his fancy car. He was also in the New Jersey National Guard at the time of the incident, and some of his posts related to that were kind of trying to make him seem really stuck up and tough. It's not really my kind of content. He wasn't super popular or anything, but once he started posting videos of his verbal and, at times, physical altercations with his neighbors, his TikToks started getting more views.
Yeah. TikTok is an interesting place.
Yeah, I'm pretty content with just staying out of it and having Hannah send me some cute animal TikToks every now and then.
Yes.
Perhaps the most infamous TikTok in this case is a verbal altercation between him and Tiffany Durham, in which she had reportedly told him to slow down and that she was going to report him to the police, and he just kept calling her Karen, which, I mean, is, rude. If you only see the video and don't know the context, you may think that she's being way too sensitive about the whole speed thing and he's responding in kind of a stereotypical bratty Gen Z way.
Yeah.
When you know the full context of the situation, I can personally see why Tiffany is so frazzled in that video, because his behavior, his speeding, his obvious lack of thought for the people around him had been going on for 2 years. The Durhams had tried going to the police prior to May of this year, especially when the taunts from Zach became dangerous. But due to the coronavirus, the courts were shut down and there was nothing that law enforcement could do. I want to focus on Zach's TikTok a little bit more here because I do think it's important to the case. The infamous Karen video was viewed hundreds of thousands of times, and commenters urged Zach to cut Tiffany's tires, egg her house, and quote-unquote, go get her? In another TikTok, you can hear an encounter between Zach and one of the Durham sons in which Zach threatens the young man from his car by saying, quote unquote, I have a knife.
Oh my God.
Yeah, these were only some of the encounters he filmed, and while most of the videos didn't get more than 150 likes, the ones where he taunts his neighbors get visibly more interaction.
Yeah.
In each of these, the Durhams were confronting him about his reckless driving, which was frankly putting them all in danger. So this brings us to May 4th, 2020. The 17-year-old Durham son is riding his bike when, allegedly, Zach swerves towards him before speeding off.
Cannot be doing that. Even joke, you can't do that.
No, absolutely not. And this obviously upsets William and his wife because that's very dangerous, especially when you're going like 100 miles per hour on a suburban street.
Yeah, that could have killed him.
According to an article in the New York Times written by Ed Shanahan, William pulled his truck into the street to block Zach's truck. They were not on Zach's property yet. This took place just on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany began recording on her phone and, quote, challenged Mr. Latham over the incident involving her son, end quote. Zach then shoved Tiffany back with his elbow and sped off towards his home.
Rude.
Mm-hmm. He reportedly had 2 friends in the bed of his truck at the time, which, side note, I don't know how many vehicles this kid had, but it's clearly too many.
Too many, especially for all the behavioral issues he's having. I would not give him any form of vehicle.
Absolutely not. So Zach got home to his wife, which, yeah, this 18-year-old kid is married.
What?
Uh-huh.
What kind of job is he having where he has like a house and...
I mean, so he was in the National Guard.
But I don't think they pay that good, do they?
No, they don't. I honestly have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty good money to have a house in a suburban area.
So it was his grandparents' house. I'm not sure if the grandparents actually lived there or if he was just given the house to live in.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not 100% clear on that whole situation. I didn't really include anything about it because I couldn't find like a reliable source that had the answer to that question. So it's not super important to the case, so I just left it out.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So he gets home to his wife, who then starts recording on her phone when the Durhams arrive shortly thereafter. And this is where things do kind of start to get a little murky as far as legality goes, because even though they were very clearly told to leave by Zach's wife, the Durhams still came onto their property.
Yeah.
They weren't armed, but the situation had really clearly escalated. So Zach gets home and he goes inside and retrieves a stun gun and 2 knives, according to that Inside Edition video. He fired the stun gun at the Durham sons and slashed at them with a knife, and William then grabs him from behind and Zach slashes his right arm. He then backs up into his garage, followed by his two friends and William Durham. Again, according to that same New York Times article, quote, a brief but violent melee then ensued, during which the stun gun was fired repeatedly, and Mr. Latham's wife urged him to drop the knife, the prosecution filing says. Mr. Durham was stabbed under the armpit, puncturing his lung in what was thought to be the fatal wound, end quote. In an article for Law Enforcement Today by Pat Droney, quote, court documents said that Durham was stabbed multiple times with a 4-inch fixed blade knife during a physical confrontation, end quote. These multiple stab wounds were under the armpit and in his back. So Zach actually ends up calling the police, but at that point it was too late for William, who succumbed to his wounds. Zach was arrested and has been charged with aggravated manslaughter. The Durham family wants it up to first-degree murder, but they're actually also charged with trespassing and assault for entering the Latham property.
Trespassing's one thing, and I'm not condoning trespassing in any way, shape, or form, but that's a lot different than stabbing people and causing someone's death.
Right. I think part of what the conversation is that, you know, the Durhams weren't armed. They were not armed. In my personal opinion, I think if they had been armed, the level of violence that he showed would maybe make a little bit more sense, because
it would make a lot more sense, yeah.
Right, because if someone is coming onto your property after both you and your wife have repeatedly told them not to, you know, that is clear warning. They're coming at you. They have a weapon. You do what you got to do to get out of that. However, the Durhams weren't armed, and
that's the thing. If they were armed, this would be a totally different story, but they weren't.
Right. I will say that I don't entirely know where the Durhams were coming from, because they'd been dealing with this for 2 years and had repeatedly gone to law enforcement and nothing was done. And, you know, it had gotten to the point to where they were worried about the health and safety of their own kids. So we come back to the question that kind of got me into this case in the first place. Did Zach Latham kill his neighbor for TikTok fame? In my personal opinion, I don't think that the murder was for TikTok, but I do think that his success with his videos tormenting his neighbors contributed to his continuing to torment his neighbors.
Yes. I definitely will agree with that statement. I don't think he intended to murder them, but I definitely think he wanted to continue harassing them because he was at almost 1 million likes. The more likes and subscribers you can get sponsorships, make more money.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if the video is still up, but at the time of the New York Times article, when that was written, and it was written in August of 2020, and the video was still up, and it had been viewed over 3 million times.
Yeah. Of, like, him stabbing the guy?
No, the Karen video.
Oh, okay. I looked, and he has no videos, and I don't know if that was lawyers making him take it down or what, but there was none. They're just... The only videos you can find is of people talking about him killing his neighbor.
Mm-hmm. So he actually did, I believe he got out on bail, maybe like a week after his arrest. And he actually continued posting on TikTok after he got out.
Stupid can you be?
I know. I don't know if it was his lawyer or the prosecution, but basically everyone had to come to an agreement to stop talking about the case on social media, which I don't think you should have to be told to stop talking about the guy that you killed on social media.
Yeah, I feel like they could get him for other lawsuits from just that.
They could, and depending on what he says and how he says it, that could, you know, really easily feed into the prosecution upping that charge to first-degree murder.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, first degree, I think, especially in this case, isn't going to happen because first degree implies that you intended to kill him and it was premeditated. And I honestly don't think it was. That aggravated manslaughter does make sense in this case, but considering the other factors, I don't blame anyone who looks at this and thinks, yeah, that should be a greater charge. At the end of the day, a father and a husband is dead and a teen has lost his future.
Yeah.
And yeah, while blame can be tossed back and forth all day, I do think that this case is an example of just one of the tragedies that can result from being a little too deep into your own personal world that you can't see how your behavior is affecting those around you. Thank you for listening to a Criminally Basic podcast. If you'd like to learn more, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at a Criminally Basic podcast.
And check out our sources as well as our photos on our website, www.acriminallybasicpodcast.podbean.com.
We'll see you next week.